Hello everybody, the INEOS Grenadier has finally arrived, well, one of them, in Australia. But I'm here to tell you when it will be arriving in numbers that you can buy, who you will be buying it from, and how much it's going to cost. I'm Andrew St. Pierre White. Join me as I share my passion for building four-wheel drive trucks and travelling to the remotest parts of the world. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join the Patreon family now. We've been assured by INEOS that before it arrives here, the Grenadier is going to be covering over 1 million kilometers worth of testing. That's great. I hope, guys, you're testing it fully loaded, pushing it to its limits, finding out what breaks. Hopefully, you're going to do a lot of that and sort it out before it goes on sale, which will be in Australia, July 2022. And I should say here that the reason why these shots are not of the Australian Grenadier is because, well, it was impounded in port. Probably because it wasn't quite clean enough. The rules of bringing vehicles into Australia are as strict as anywhere in the world. And they were hoping, I think, to send us some lovely images of the Australian version for this press release, but things didn't quite go to plan. So here's some footage you may have already seen. You won't be buying it from traditional dealerships. So you have a Hyundai dealership and you have all their models, and the Subaru and all their models, and Toyota and all, etc. No, because they only have one model. So what they're doing instead is they're approaching and have approached and have signed up, and apparently this is all on the INEOS website now, who the dealers will be. These are organizations already selling automotive vehicles, stuff, kit, or whatever. I'll give you one example, and this is probably reasonably typical. There's an organization, I won't name it, not necessary, for this in Queensland, and they sell Harley Davidson, KTM, and various other motorcycles and off-road vehicles, and they have been brought into the INEOS fold and will be selling vehicles from their dealerships. In other words, they will have all of the financial machinery to buy a vehicle. So you're not going to see it in glitzy, glassy showrooms. You're going to see it and have, and we're assured there are going to be plenty to test drive available for, like it was a traditional dealership. You just won't have the glitz and the glamour, which of course costs money. It's nice, but it costs money. All right, so all of these things are bringing the price of the Grenadier down. Yes, well, I assume that is the case. Prices. Okay, now they've come up with a starting price, and this is quite interesting because they're talking about a two-door commercial version, which will start at 84,500 Australian. In New Zealand, that's 93,500, give or take. So this is not an inexpensive car. I mean, if you look at it in terms of a pickup, a ute, it's an expensive one. The good news is that they're also talking about a double cab version. And all of these things say to me that, fit for purpose, this slogan that they've been using during all of their video releases, and they're sharing with four-wheel drive fans of what they're trying to achieve. And they're using this thing fit for purpose. And fit for purpose, to me, could so easily be just a marketing platitude. Because you get pickups and they're the toughest and everything, and everybody's, the marketing guys are all using all of these superlatives, which actually mean nothing. They're just superlatives to please the marketing department and hopefully sell some cars. This is a little bit different, and I'll tell you why. What purpose? Off-road utility. So this is my challenge to you, INEOS. You're building a vehicle for off-road utility. Let me see, what would that have to include? It would have to include a pickup version. utility. True utility, you have to have a pickup version. You are. You're making a double cab. That's a good sign. Off-road. If you want a really good off-road vehicle, you put solid axles at the back and the front. End of story. If you want it to be superlative off-road, that's what you do, and that's what they've done. Let's think about that now in terms of the world's off-road vehicles. Available now and available 10 years ago. What vehicles fit into that category? Land Rover Defender, they don't make it anymore, and the new one obviously isn't. Okay, there's nothing utilitarian about the new Defender at all, and we all know this, and this is why we were disappointed in it. We were hoping that they would, and they didn't. All right. Mercedes-Benz Geländewagen 461 series, the basic series. They no longer build a pickup version of that. They did for a while the professional. You can no longer get them in Australia. There was a small window where you could buy them in Australia, which was not open for more than about 2 years. You can no longer buy the Mercedes G Professional in this country. That is a true utilitarian, built for purpose, off-road utilitarian vehicle. All right, solid axles, pickup versions, and station wagon versions. It ticks every box as far as I'm concerned. And of course the Nissan. We went from GQ to GU to Y61 to Y62. By the time it got to 62, all of the utilitarian had been knocked out of it. The best Land Cruiser ever made was the 80 series. Long travel, coil springs, solid axles front and back. Some people, and I agree with this, Toyota's finest hour. All right, and from then they've gone gradually downhill. And now the 300, which is the first Land Cruiser model, I'm just plain not interested in. I was interested in the 200, but yeah, okay. Just too ugly. It's probably a pretty good car, but I've lost interest in it. Jeep. The Jeep has solid front axles back and front, but it's not a refined vehicle at all. It doesn't have a great reputation for reliability. It has a fantastic reputation for off-road. So isn't the Jeep enough? Why then did INEOS build the Grenadier when there was a vehicle very similar to it called the Jeep Wrangler? It's really good off-road. Very low payload. Not particularly strongly built, great fun vehicle, not a particularly good overlander because it doesn't have the payload and the range. So they wanted something much better than the Jeep. As much as I like the Jeep, it's a great fun drive. It's not a great car. It's not particularly well made and not particularly well engineered, but great fun. I think what they were doing is saying, okay, we're going to do that, but much more seriously, to attract a different buyer. And that's my question. Is it really going to attract a different buyer? A small section, yes. People like me, definitely. It would definitely attract my attention because it potentially, the diesel version, there will be a diesel and a petrol, and they are going to be exactly the same price. They will both be mated to an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which interests me too. A hardened off-roader will say, oh, it's got to be manual. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm a bit of a traditionalist when it comes to four-wheel drive and driving, but a well-tuned automatic gearbox is a wonderful thing off-road. Pros and cons. Some things it's worse than that manual, some things it's better. For a touring vehicle, generally speaking, it's better. There's not a lot in it, but it is a bit better. Why do you think that the Land Cruiser 79 or 70 series is popular and still made today? Okay, it is built for purpose. It is made for agricultural use. There are ute versions, you know, hard conditions, hard work, good clearance, low range gearing, solid axles front and back. The payload's not that good. The payload is a bit better than your average ute, but not by much. It's not a particularly good load carrying vehicle. So why do Toyota still make it? They still make it and they still sell it because mines, agricultural farmers, NGOs beat the living daylights out of their vehicles because the drivers, many of the drivers, if not most, have zero mechanical sympathy. So they treat them very hard. And ordinary vehicles, those with independent front suspension, don't last as long because they're not as strong. If I look at the footage of the Grenadier, I don't see an abundance of clearance. Don't worry, we'll sort that out when we give it a lift and do all the things we love to do with four-wheel drives. Okay, it has coil springs, no electronics in the suspension, so we can do that, okay. But as a standard version, it's not over-endowed with clearance, but remember that it's compared to an independent front suspension, it has more clearance because it has a solid axle. When the vehicle is static, sitting on flat ground, it may appear as if it has a lower clearance, but it actually doesn't, because the moment the ground gets uneven, when a solid axle lifts, it lifts the low part, the axle, over the obstacle. The low part goes up. With independent, it doesn't. It actually goes down. Initially anyway, it goes down. Let's take it a little bit further. Okay, it's ticking a lot of boxes. The engine, the BMW engine. Now, of all of the criticisms of the Grenadier that I have read, the most common is BMW engine. Why BMW engine? Well, if I think about it, I don't particularly like the idea of a BMW engine, but why don't I like it? Because I think, and I think I am in the majority of people, think that BMW drivers, most of them, are dicks. We all agree on that. This is the one thing here we all agree on, especially an X5, which is a completely useless off-road vehicle. It's the worst of BMW. It's a pretend off-road vehicle. So we don't like it because we're associating the BMW brand with a brand that we don't like. This is just the engine. So that straight six, let's think about that straight six. How long has it been around? A long time. Is it well proven? Without question, it's a well proven engine. Well, when I say well proven, it's been adapted and so much adapted, but tweaked by BMW because it's been on the market for so long. So you could say it's quite an old engine, it's been around for a while. Would you prefer a Toyota engine? You would have a similar number of people saying, I don't want it because I don't like the brand Toyota. Not as many perhaps, but enough. Any engine they put into this vehicle is going to be, the fingers are going to be pointed at it. A well-proven European, it's a European car, European engine. Okay, is it reliable? Yes, it's a very reliable engine. Where can I get it serviced? Where can you buy a BMW? It's the same engine as they fit in current BMW cars. Do you think they're not going to have spare parts? Do you think the spare parts is going to be a challenge? It's not going to be a challenge at all. In fact, the maps that they showed us during the press conference showed that they are very serious about Australia in terms of support, the support network, the servicing network, and they're serious about Australia. And they understand it's a very big country. The people actually organising this in Australia are Australians. They've been involved in the Australian motor industry for several years. So I'm confident that it's in reasonably good hands. There are not a whole lot of foreigners come into Australia and think they know what they're doing and just kind of, we've seen that before. You know, strangers come into a country and then they think they know everything and they mess it up. So here's a question. You're probably asking, who's going to service it? Well, they have teamed up with a recognised branded service centre. Now, I don't know if it's just, for example, they gave us an example, Bosch service centres. They're all over the country. Okay, they're going to team up with them. How specifically they're going to team up, I don't know. But it's reasonably reassuring that they're going to an organization that's well-founded, well-established, and hopefully their quality is good. I don't know if their quality is any good. I've never dealt with them personally. But that's what they're trying to do. They've made the claim that they're going to best in class for the gearbox and best in class for, you know, engines and engineering and things like that. And that sounds great, doesn't it? I think they're trying the same with the servicing. They're trying to find something well established, well respected, and broadly available in Australia. I did spot one unfortunate thing on the website. Standard tyres will be Bridgestone. They don't make good off-road tyres. In terms of accessories, this is quite an interesting one because they are going to supply their own accessories. Now some of you are probably going, oh heavens, you know, what do they know about building accessories? But here's the problem. Unless they're selling considerable numbers, companies like TJM, ARB, Opposite Lock, what other ones? I'm talking about the reasonably sized equipment accessory manufacturers are going to invest in the tooling for that car. For example, you cannot buy bull bars and things easily for Mercedes Geländewagen, even though they were available in this country for purchase. To get a bull bar was a bit of a struggle. There were very, very few available because there weren't the numbers being sold that would warrant the investment in the tooling. So when the Grenadier comes out, exactly the same is going to happen. People like ARB are going to say, yeah, we're definitely interested, but we're going to just wait a little bit to make sure that what we make, what we invest in, is sold and we can keep making money out of it. Because INEOS probably realizes that they are going to have a basic catalogue of accessories that you can buy off the shelf. I think that's probably a very prudent move to begin with. So I imagine it's going to be 2 to 3 years from the launch of Grenadier before we actually start seeing multiple and variations of accessories available in the stores. So here's a thing for the NGOs out there. I don't understand why NGOs prefer manual gearboxes. I don't get it. I think you're living in the past. All right? Because when you have a driver with no mechanical sympathy, they tend to hammer the daylights out of the vehicle, and because there is a hard, fast locking mechanism called a clutch between the engine and the drivetrain, when they treat it badly, there's no cushioning of that. Whereas an automatic gearbox has a torque converter, which allows give. That's how it works. You ask any rental company, and you ask them how long your vehicles last, your autos or your manuals, which one lasts the longer? They'll say that autos always last longer, always, because it's more difficult to abuse them, because that part is protected by this shock absorber called a torque converter. So in Gibraltar, where they sell thousands upon thousands of Toyota four-wheel drives to NGOs, very large proportion of them are manual gearbox. Why? Makes no sense to me. I think it's counterproductive. INEOS may very well target NGOs, but this is an expensive vehicle. Hold on a minute. There's nothing cheap about a 70 Series Land Cruiser because you're spending money on the engineering and the strength and the solid axles, which cost more to make. That's why the 70 Series is an expensive car. For what you get, for the value, for the perceived value, it's an expensive car. That is why the Grenadier starts at over 80,000 Australian dollars for the two-door model. It's not going to be a cheap model. And I can guarantee that the five-door that we're seeing in all the press footage, it's going to be close to, it'll be somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000 for the full spec one. How can it not be? I am seriously interested in it, in getting one for myself. I don't need one. The troop carrier is a wonderful overland machine. I love the idea of having something that new, that fresh, and that interesting to do some trips with, i.e. the Grenadier. Is it going to be as good as the troop carrier? No, it's not going to be as good as the troop carrier, because the troop carrier is a van, and because it's a van I can convert it into a camper. I cannot do that with the Grenadier. But hold on a minute, hold on a minute, hold on, whoa. The lowest cost one is a 2-door variant, and I don't think, and I don't know, that that is not a van as well. Now you're talking. Now you're talking. If you produced, I would buy a 2-door van variant of an INEOS Grenadier in a heartbeat. Would I? Really, seriously, would I? I don't think I would be able to not buy one. I hope what I've given you is food for thought. I'm afraid we're going to have to wait until late 2022, and we're going to save our shekels. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for watching. These videos are made possible by contributions from Patreons. Join our Patreon family now.